Hi, I'm Erin Power.
And I'm Laura Rupsis.
We're certified health coaches, and this is Health Coach Radio.
This podcast is about the art, science, and business of health coaching.
We share our insider tips to help you become a better coach and entrepreneur.
And we interview expert guests to discover how they've made it in this growing field.
It's time for health coaches to make an impact.
It's time for Health Coach Radio.
Our guest today is Maiya Keeling, a board-certified health and wellness coach, clinical exercise physiologist, and Navy veteran. Her experience in the military helped carve her niche for her. She saw how health suffered for those serving in the military and paramilitary services and has been working with veterans and with firefighters. Firefighters are under very unique stressors: shift work, a high-pressure work environment, time spent away from home, which not only affects one's food and movement, but also can affect their relationships. She teaches her clients that it's okay to take care of themselves. We know this statement to be true regardless of one's involvement with the military or paramilitary, but the way we talk through it with Maiya is quite enlightening. Our show's sponsor is Primal Health Coach Institute, an NBHWC-approved health coaching school. This means that our graduates can qualify to sit for the national board exam to become a board-certified health coach. You can learn more about our Master Coach certification track at primalhealthcoach.com/mastercoach. While you're on our website, navigate to primalhealthcoach.com/primalpro and learn all about the Done For You 12-week app-based health coaching program we've put together so that certified health coaches can hit the ground running with an effective and transformational health coaching program right out of the gate. We know that developing program materials and sourcing a client management solution are two of the most show-stopping hurdles in new coaches getting started, and we made Primal Pro for you. Check it out, www.primalhealthcoach.com/primalpro. While you're listening to us, make sure to screen grab your podcast player and tag us in your Instagram stories at Health Coach Radio. And as always, the show notes for this episode and all previous episodes of our pod can be found at primalhealthcoach.com/radio. Let's get on with the show. Please enjoy this excellent and inspiring conversation with our guest, practicing board-certified health coach serving veterans and paramilitary members, Maiya Keeling.
All right, Maiya, what a treat. We love talking to existing health coaches and unpacking your story and how you got here and find inspiration in what you do. So would you please introduce yourself for our audience? Give us a little bit of your backstory.
Of course. Good morning, and thank you for having me. I'm Maiya Keeling. So I'm a nationally board certified health coach and also a registered clinical exercise physiologist through the American College of Sports Medicine. So I've been practicing for a while. I love what I do. I have a passion for helping people and really for practicing what I preach. So I love it when my worlds collide, when I can talk about exercise and help people live a healthier life, but then also help them find their own motivation to do whatever it is that they've set their mind on.
So how did you get started with this? Like what was the origin of your interest in all this stuff?
Yeah, so I've always been interested in health and, medicine and fitness. And so I remember even being 4 years old and my dad got me this giant medical dictionary as if I could read it. And so I think I still have it somewhere. And it's always been something that I would flip through the pages and learn about diseases and look at the pictures. And so I just kind of gravitated towards the body and how the body responds. So when I was in high school, I took all of the, medical services classes, and then I went to Elon for undergrad and I studied exercise sports science. So that's where I got my bachelor's from. And after there, I went to the military, and that was a completely different experience because I saw all of, working in the hospital setting in the PACU and on the ward, I saw the consequences of when people didn't live a healthy life, right? So you think military hospital, these are tough soldiers in shape, but a lot of times we got their family members, right? So the service members deployed or they're on base and their wife is sick or their kid's sick. And so we're taking care of those individuals too. So a lot of surgeries that could have been prevented if a lifestyle would have been, lived in a healthier way. So that's when I shifted my focus to prevention. I want to help people before they get to this point, before the gastric bypass is needed, before you lose a leg from amputation for diabetes complications. So as soon as I got out of the military, I went to grad school, got my master's in clinical exercise physiology, got registered by ACSM, kind of launched me into the world of health and fitness, and found different careers with health coaching as a focus. And so it kind of married everything in an integrative approach. And that's what I've been doing the past 8 years. It's working in health coaching.
So what branch of the military were you in, and what led you to join the military?
Yeah, so I was in the Navy. I didn't come from a strong military background, actually. To me, it was, how can I, serve, but also still stay connected with my mission, what I wanted to do and pursue my studies. And so that enabled me to, go to grad school without having to pay for anything. It was such a blessing and an opportunity to take that route. And then after,
how long did you spend in the military?
I spent 5 years on active duty.
Wow. Okay. So then you leave the military and you go to grad school, just digging deeper into this passion you sort of always had, which I love. And come out of this, the fitness girl, basically, right? Exercise. And so how did you stumble onto health coaching? So here's a question I have for you, because, I get a lot of people interested in this stuff that in some way hear this term, health coaching. Oh, what's that? Right. And then dig a little bit deeper. And so there's still, I think, for a lot of people, a lot of squishiness or just sort of uncertainty about what health coaching is. How did you find it? And what led you to think, that's interesting and I want to marry this?
That's what I want to do. Yeah. So I think I was working in like a big box gym at the time, right? I had finished grad school. I had actually contracted with the Army on a research study. So I was getting to do my ex-phys stuff on active duty soldiers. And I started searching through, knowing that the study was going to end. What am I going to do next? And that's when I came across a posting on a job search engine for health coaches. And it was kind of like what you described, like health coaching, like that's all the things I can do. Like I love the body, I love helping people change. And so I applied, and that ended up being the company that had the city of Charlotte as their client. So I got placed with the firefighters after interviewing 2 fire chiefs. They were like, okay, we want you for the firefighters because of your military background, you understand the culture. And it kind of went off from there. And they just accepted me in, and I felt like this is what I love doing. It was a perfect fit.
That's really cool. Yeah, that's really cool how you were able to leverage that military experience.
It definitely worked in my favor.
Yeah, no doubt. Because I think that like firefighters, EMS, police. I actually had a client last year who was a 911 dispatcher. So and like her schedule and the stresses that she was under were like nothing that I could ever relate to, but you can, like, you were in active duty, right? So like, speak a little bit about firefighters. Let's pick them, or any of them, I guess, any of the paramilitary type services. Like what are some of the things that specifically you saw in those populations?
So I would say a bulk of what I coached through with that specific population was stress and sleep. So you've got these guys and gals who live for, adrenaline, right? They're not sleeping because they're just waiting for that call in the middle of the night. So they like, for a good night quality sleep, it doesn't even exist depending on what station you're at. And Charlotte's huge. We have 43 stations, so we're covering a huge area of the city. So it just was really important to be intentional about how can you get the best sleep, even if that means you're moving to a different side of the city just so you can get sleep because the neighborhood's slower. And then the stress that comes along with it, a lot of it was relational. You're at a firehouse for 24 hours and your family is on its own without you. So maybe there's some tension there with the kids or tension with the spouse. So a lot of the coaching was stress and sleep. And then we all know that can lead to weight gain, that can lead to, disordered eating. You're trying to eat real fast before the next call comes through. So you're not recognizing that you're already full. And it was a whole host of things all married together, that it's a unique population that they've really got to try to navigate. And I'm thankful that I was the one that could be there to help them navigate through all of that.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
I used to know a firefighter, and I went to the fire hall one time. That's a weird thing to say, that I used to know, but I did. I don't know him anymore. Anyway, I went to the fire hall one time, and I don't know why, I was just visiting, but like they grocery shop together, then they make the meals together. So there's a whole food culture too at the fire hall. So did you work with them on that stuff too, like really specifically?
Absolutely. So we kind of got to where had such a good rapport, and they trusted me. They let me in. And so I was like, well, let's do some lunch and learns, because I'm eating with you. I'm seeing, some of the things that are going on. We always have a saying, like, you're at the mercy of the chef, which whoever is the cook at the fire station, everybody's going to eat how that person cooks. So if you can get to change the behaviors of that one person, you've got 4 guys or 8 guys eating completely different. So we did lunch and learns, and I would send them 2 recipes that morning and tell them to pick whichever one, they had a taste for. And I'd send them to the grocery store as they normally would. They'd buy all the things for that recipe. And then I'd meet them right at the station, and we'd prep it together, cook it together, and eat it together. And slowly, it just, caught on. And then other shifts would get jealous. Well, I heard that you went to 32. When are you going to come over our way? So it just took off.
How fun. I love that too, because that is the essence of health coaching, right? It's literally modeling and literally showing people how this works in real life, and it's doable and it's delicious. And wow, how fun. So was that a request that you had from them, or was this your idea? And so you had this started with the one firehouse that was open to this. And tell us about that.
It was kind of a request in jest, right? Like, well, if you want us to eat better, how about you cook for us? I said, I'll cook with you. I'm not going to cook for you. I'll cook with you, And so it's just, okay, the guys got on board with it, and they said, well, this is how much we have to spend each day. Like, we each put in $5. So it was learning the culture, adopting that and saying, how can we make this work within their budget and make it worthwhile, right? So just introducing them to different recipes, things like some guys had never known what an avocado was, or they didn't know the difference between a cucumber and zucchini. So there was a lot of education in there. And then just the fact that they got to do it with their own hands so that they could then replicate it. And I'd get a message, weeks later, hey, we made your meal again. We liked that dish, or I shared it at home with my family and they loved it. They loved that sauce, So it was an exciting time. It's exciting.
Well, I just like scooting back a bit to some of these, like some of the demographics, I guess. So maybe when we think about firefighters and police officers, we think of these like fit, virile, guys that are lifting weights and training, and they're all, we think of the calendar guys, I guess.
Such a misconception.
This is what I'm getting at. Like,
yes.
Yeah. So like, you must, there's older firefighters, there's newer firefighters, there's ones who've been in the service for a long time, and maybe have established some, these things like sleep and stress have caught up with them, and there's maybe some metabolic syndrome stuff going on. Like, what kind of stuff did you see in this population?
Yeah, so I think the setup was very unique in that I don't know too many other organizations that were doing this at the time. I would get their screening results. They'd get screened every January. So I had all their lab results at the start of every year. So I knew exactly who was dealing with what station I maybe needed to frequent more often, because there was a group that was all eating the same, running the most calls out of the city. So they were getting the least amount of sleep. So a lot of, hypertension, a lot of some obesity, but a lot of stress. So it was a mix of everything, but definitely the stress and sleep were the biggest things. And then relating to labs, it was a lot of, hypertension, some high cholesterol, and that all had to tie in with, just the lifestyle of it, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting.
Man, stress is a killer, man. And I just, when I think through when I first started down this path, my big passion was food and nutrition. And the longer I do this, the more time I spend on sort of mindset and stress reduction and sleep, because if those two things are a constant disruption, you get all these fits and starts, and it's, well, I was doing so well, and then I quote unquote fell off the wagon. You know, that's a term I hear a lot. I fell off the wagon. I'm like, dude, you're not on a wagon. This is your life. This is your journey. Right? Okay, so there was a fork in the road. Yeah, you know, whatever. You meandered, but I don't like. We're trying to get rid of that mindset. So, you know, I would love to hear from you. I guess maybe some techniques or strategies or what you think works really well, certainly for this demographic, but just for clients in general, where this is an issue, high levels of stress. What is it that you're doing as a coach to help clients handle that, reduce it, manage it, reframe it? I'd love to hear your thoughts there.
Yeah, so sometimes I've had to coach them through how to make a shift, right? So a lot of times we get comfortable where we are, even though we know it's not working for us. We're used to it. So for some guys who have been at a station for a long time, you know, they like it because their friends are there, their brothers are there. They like the speed, the pace of the calls that they get. This is why I became a firefighter, so I could, you know, stay busy all day. But then coming to a point where you realize what it's doing to your body. And so coaching them through, what are you feeling? You know, you're saying you're not sleeping, your relationships at home are stressed. What would it look like to make a shift? You know, if you went across town, what would that look like? How you might feel if you know, had a slower station where you could get more sleep, where you were eating better. So sometimes it's just the hard conversations, looking at a big shift. And a lot of times the little things are easier, but sometimes we've just got to make that big shift and even just consider it. Maybe don't do it, but just think about it. Think about how things would be different if you made that big shift.
Yeah. I mean, I think every coach has had the conversation with clients that just don't see a way out. I can't, you know, I can't because, and sometimes it's real. A lot of times it's real.
It's real.
So then it's really more of a conversation about kind of reframing some of this stuff and kind of understanding that the biggest negative impact stress has is how we view it, the way we internalize it. You know, do you have any sort of recommendations as far as strategies or skills that you can help empower your clients with on how to, we're not going to get rid of it, but how do you make it less detrimental, I guess?
Yes. I think helping people recognize first when they are stressed. You know, are you noticing that your shoulders are up at your ears? Are you noticing that? I had someone recently tell me, I know that I'm stressed when I start playing with my fingers. You know, so recognizing when you are stressed, so then you know, okay, what am I going to do? Because I'm stressed right now. And so always go to, you know, deep breathing, which is hard to tell, you know, a bunch of firefighters just take a deep breath. Some of the mindfulness techniques that work for others may not work for certain demographics. So for them, it's, you know, take a walk around the station, just get outside, get the fresh air. Or when you know that you've got some downtime, what would it look like, you know, to go to the weight room that all the stations have and do something in there instead of, you know, ruminating or letting your mind play over negative thoughts or letting that stress fester. Just pointing out the resources that they have, letting them see, well, this is an option or that's an option. I could do that. I hadn't considered that. It seems to really help.
Yeah. So when you took this position and you get assigned to the fire department for Charlotte, the organization that you were employed with, did they have a program that they wanted you to implement, or were you given the freedom or the autonomy to design? Did you have a set program? Are you tackling each sort of firehouse differently, each individual differently? Because this is something I think coaches struggle with too, is kind of building a program that's flexible. So, and we do have folks that become a health coach, and at the end of the day, they do want to go get a job, and they'll go get a job and then realize, I don't know if I really like the program that I've been told I need to deliver. It's not aligned with me. So I would love to hear your experience as an employed health coach rather than someone who maybe started out self-employed.
Yeah. So I always take the mindset, you know, meeting that person exactly where they are, and that's framed how I've, practiced coaching since the very beginning.
Yeah.
So initially we were, introduced to health coaching and all of the basics and, fundamentals of it, but you adopt your own style. And, I'm someone who's an extreme extrovert. I connect with people very easily. People seem to trust me very easily. And so we're able to dive in maybe a little bit quicker. Mm-hmm. And so, especially with that population, them knowing that I was prior military, they let me in a little bit sooner. And so it was asking the questions, what do you want to do? I know the city says you have to do X, Y, and Z because your blood pressure is X, Y, Z, but what's most important? What would help, with the efficiency? What would help with productivity? What would help, make your 24 hours here, fulfilling? And so that's where we started. It was, okay, well, I'd like an exercise program, or can you work out with us as a shift? One of the stations actually has a volleyball court in their backyard, and we played volleyball together. That was a way to get everybody off the couch, off the TV, and active. Nice. Just meeting them exactly where they are. And that's your program, right? Realizing everybody's different and everybody's going to have different needs, and just seeing what drives them and joining them along that journey.
Yes. So this is really, really crucial, because what we're talking about here is the client-centered relationship. Mm-hmm. Yes. And it is in some ways about suspending your beliefs around what a program should be, and, mm-hmm. and asking. And when you think about the outcomes of a coaching program, it is this autonomy and self-efficacy. So you want the client to know exactly what to do for themselves by themselves. Mm-hmm. So you have to ask them and involve them in the conversation. I'm liking what I'm hearing, because even when you were kind of answering Laura's questions about like stress strategies, it was about not about like sharing the research about stress. And, this is what physiologically happens with stress. You were having them drop presently into their own expression of stress. I play with my fingers. This is what it feels like. This is what's happening. And I just really think that's amazing, because like clearly you have a lot of experience with your military, and then extrapolating that into the paramilitary. You've got a lot of education, a master's degree in exercise physiology, et cetera, et cetera. At the end of the day, the client also is an expert. Yes. And we need to nurture their expertise. So this is coaching 101 as far as I'm concerned.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And if I share a little example, when I first got to the fire department, the reason why they, wanted to sit in on the interview process, because they previously had a different coach, and who was, maybe not really reading the room per se, and wanted them to do, these deep breathing and hold my hands. And that was their first impression. And so they kind of backed away from the table and said, we don't want to participate in this program if this is going to be the next experience. So they were looking for something new and different, and someone to meet them where they were and understand the culture and the demographic. And I think as coaches, we have to do that, right? We've got to read the room and get out of our own heads, and maybe lay our agenda to the side and truly be present.
Absolutely. And I'm wondering too, because, when I teach our advanced coaching course, I'm of the opinion that if you learn the fundamentals of client-led coaching, that you could pretty much coach anyone.
Yes.
Believe that. I believe, and I actually run this experiment in the course, because we set up these coaching role plays, and it's like, you should be able to coach anyone. If you active listening, the whole motivational interviewing piece, it works, right? But there's also something to be said about having a kinship, a similarity on sort of that level. And this, I guess, goes to niching. We talk about niche when you're building your practice. Like, you kind of inadvertently came into this niche, which makes absolute perfect sense for you. Right. So, like the more yogini style, let's hold hands and breathe approach wasn't the right approach for these guys, but you just could relate to them better. So there's something to be said for that too. I think I don't want to oversell the coaching relationship, because ideally you do have something specific as an individual to offer this audience as well.
Yeah. I'd agree.
Yeah. Cool.
Okay. So I guess I just want to paint the picture of this journey. So you are hired by this organization that places you with the fire department in Charlotte. Is that what you're still doing now, or tell us about that?
Yeah, so I did that for believe 3 years. And then towards the end of that, I was with them for a total of 5 years because they got a new contract with a different vendor, and I was still with the fire department. But then I got added on the solid waste department and the water department. So then I was doing it all, and I really noticed the differences. Like we're all, they're all city employees. Complete differences in what I was seeing in terms of labs, the response to coaching, completely different. But it was something that helped me grow. Like you said, you can coach to anyone. And so there were just varying degrees of individuals and their readiness throughout the city. So that was helpful for me. And then after I left them, then that's when I came on with the government. And so again, me as a veteran, working with veterans, we again found that common ground, but didn't stay there, really just deflecting back on them. What is it that they're coming for? And a lot of times they've gotten to my chair because the doctor has sent them, this is what's wrong with you. You need to be fixed. Go see Maiya. She'll fix you. But that's, they'll get into the office and I'll say, that's not what I'm here for. I'm not trying to fix you. And we do some self-discovery and figure out what matters most to them. And that's the highlight question. What matters most to you? And then how can we get you there? Where are you now? And then where would you like to be? And let's figure out what steps we need to take to get you closer so that you're content and fulfilled. And so that's how those relationships have, really blossomed. And people just feel empowered to take the next step and then graduate. I always ask early on, what would it look like for you to graduate? What needs to happen in order for you to graduate from health coaching? When will you know it's time to fire me? So we're asking that early on, so then they know when they've gotten there, oh yeah, I said I was done at this point. Yeah. I feel good at this point.
Oh, I love that you frame it that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so how did you get there? So how did you make the transition from working with the city of Charlotte and city workers to working with veterans, which, by the way, I moved down to Florida, and the community, so Northern Florida, there's a huge base in Jacksonville. There's a lot, yes. So lots and lots of military, lots and lots of veterans in this space. And I have to say, I think more veterans need this kind of care. Mm-hmm. They just do. And so thank you for taking that on. Can you tell us about that transition, how you went from there to working with veterans?
Yeah, so I think the contract ended. And so I was looking for the next move. I knew the contract was ending with the city. So I started, applying. And the VA was something that I'd always looked at, since that's where I get my care as well. And they were having this program, which kind of introduced a complementary approach to healthcare. So it wasn't just your doctor telling you what to do like traditional medicine. It was, how can we support you with this model? And it resonated with me. I want to help people continue to do what I've been doing in coaching, just for this population. So it worked out.
Yeah. Okay. So people listening. So I love this because, my role at our school is as admissions director. And I have a lot of people asking about what kind of jobs and employment opportunities available. So this is such a great example of, first of all, they're out there and they're growing. And second of all, if the fact that literally the city of Charlotte and literally the veterans, like the VA, recognizes the benefit of health coaching, if that right there doesn't highlight for you the growth of this and the wide acceptance and efficacy of health coaching, I don't know what does. Right?
You're right.
I love it. So you're working for the VA as a health coach. Tell us a little bit about what that's like.
So meeting with people, again, who walk in the doors for various reasons, very few come maybe on their own. The ones that do are, I don't want to take pills anymore. I'm tired of taking medication and I want a more holistic. And I heard that you guys have chiropractic care, and I heard that there's a health coach, and I heard that there's, a clinical psychologist. I would like a whole team to support me as I navigate this health journey. So we do have those individuals, but then also the ones that, we get a lot from mental health. Like, this person really needs some guidance in finding fulfillment, or we get those from even suicide prevention. So we're getting people on all ends of the health spectrum, of the wellness spectrum. So
this,
yeah.
I think it's important to highlight this. So the experience as a health coach, when you're working for an organization, I think you're going to find you have a larger percentage of people that are not coming to you from an intrinsic place. They're coming to you from an extrinsic place because their employer or the person that provides the organization that provides their benefit is telling them they have to. So it's a different kind of start to the relationship compared to, say, a private practice where clients are coming to you, they've sought out your care on their own. So can you, I would love for you to illustrate a little bit of the difference of your starting place from these two people. Even though it's within the VA, you have some that are coming to you on their own, some that are kind of not given a choice, you know? I would love for you to maybe contrast your starting place with these people.
I would really say that it's the same in that it depends on it. It all goes back to the self-discovery. I'm doing, what we call a personal health inventory with every single person I meet with, regardless of how they get there. So, some are more eager to, fill it out and figure out where do I want to start, or they come knowing I need to focus in nutrition or I need to focus in my sleep. So we're starting with that discovery, regardless of why they're in the office. And then follow-ups are the same, building rapport is the same. Really, it's the same. You may have somebody who is more confident in their ability to carry out their goals. If they came on their own, then maybe a little bit more hesitant or scared, or I don't know if this is going to work because I tried X, Y, and Z and my doctor's still on my case. So maybe you'll have more sessions with the person who was referred by the doctor. But you're going to meet them exactly where they are, just like you would the person who's excited. So I honestly don't see too huge of a contrast. Working with that particular population, good about keeping their appointments. They're not paying for anything. So you would think, well, maybe there's less buy-in, but these are veterans, right? We have an appointment, we show up. So I've not seen a huge difference in that, as I think I would with, a self-paid or out in the community person.
Right. So what might be the differentiator is kind of to Laura's point that the person who came to you of their own accord maybe is already connected to their intrinsic motivator, and but you as the coach with the other half of the population might have to do that work with them. I'm here because my doctor said my blood pressure is too high. Then that's not a strong intrinsic motivator. So let's talk about, well, how does this feel for you? What else is going on, and what else about your health can we talk about? And that's honestly the role of the coach too, is because even in my private practice, people come to me and pay me money, and they don't have a strong intrinsic motivator a lot of the time either. It's like, I got to get into these size 6 jeans before my high school reunion, and it's like, okay, but why? So I think that, to your point, that work happens regardless of where they come from.
It does.
Yep. I think the veteran population would be interesting because it would be so widely varied, because Army veteran or military veterans aren't just old guys, there's young people, there's men, women, all kinds of, all manner of mental health struggles too. Does the mental health stuff, how do you feel comfortable dealing with some of that mental health stuff? Or how do you share the load of some of that stuff with maybe more licensed professionals?
Yeah, I like the way you phrase that, share the load. That's definitely what we do. I work very closely with psychologists or social workers even that may refer someone to me. And so because we are in a clinical setting, we have the ability to share notes or tag each other on the electronic health record. So that's a benefit that you have working in that setting, whereas you might not in a private practice. So being able to leverage that community that I know is right down the hall or right across the door, or even, sending a message, would you mind talking to this person? Or I've literally walked an individual down to the primary care for, like a mental health crisis. Like, I'm going to walk with you. And this is, I've done, we're at a stopping place or a pause, really, because I want to put you into the best hands possible to address X, Y, Z. And so sometimes it's pausing coaching and getting the person to realize, I can come back to this anytime. Right now, I need to focus on this.
I think it's really interesting to hear health coaching described in the context of more integrative approach like this, especially because I spent my whole health coaching career in private practice. So it's so interesting to hear the different ways that this integrative approach is being used. I just think it's really exciting that you have this sort of team that you get to work with. So before we were pressing record on this, you suggested that one of the tactics that's really crucial for these populations you work with is self-care, which is a word that has a nebulous meaning. So can you explain why that's important and what you mean by that? What you mean by that?
So it's very expansive. When I think about self-care, I always have that image of, when you're on an airplane and the flight attendant's telling you, please make sure you put on your own mask before helping somebody else, if we run out of oxygen. So I think about giving attention to ourselves in the way that we normally don't. We think about often to do something for somebody else, or if you're a parent, my kids need this and this and this. And often you give that before you eat your own meal or get yourself dressed. So just highlighting that it's okay to take care of yourself. You shouldn't feel, guilty. And a lot of times we do. So helping people to come to the realization that by taking care of themselves, they can then take care of those around them that they love. So it's different with different populations, I think, and some generations are more accepting of that term and of that thought process. So it's, again, meeting that person where they are and asking, what does self-care look like to you? Like for a mom, it may be, I just want to get out and get a manicure. Maybe that's how I practice self-care. For a Vietnam vet, maybe that's, I want to have coffee with a buddy and just talk, share war stories. So it looks different for everybody, and that's okay.
Okay. Yeah. I do find it hard to define.
Yeah. I mean, I would 100% agree. I mean, I work with a lot of moms too. And for so many of them, it's just time alone. And then they feel guilty that they want to be alone when they've got these little humans that they're responsible for. But then when I really get to the root of, when we're having conversations about this is where the guilt comes from. So what I value most is my family and my kids. It's what I value most. Yet I feel the need to have time away from them.
Yeah, it's a values conflict.
Yes. And it's about switching that mindset from, it's not so much time away from them. It's just time for you. And, what really drives me is exactly this, like the idea of being dependent on my children as I get older scares, excuse my language, the shit out of me, right? Not because I don't trust them to care for me, but I have this intrinsic motivator. I'm a caregiver at this point, right? And I don't want the idea of the tables turning and the relationship turning is abhorrent to me. At some point, I'm probably gonna have to get over that, but it's what drives me. We've talked in the past with other people about really understanding the motivator, and sometimes those goals or those motivations that are so far out in the future are hard to really connect to. But for me, it's not, because I went through a period where I was unwell. And it scared me because I was like, I'm a single mom and I've got a full-time job and a couple of kids that rely on me. I have an employee that what do I do? So that's very front and center, but things that are too far in the distance are kind of hard to connect to. And so when I'm thinking in terms of whether it's the veteran population or the other first responders that you're listening to in the terms of self-care, and the importance of caring for yourself so that you can care for others, I just think is so important. So I would love for you to speak to a little bit, because there's got to be a lot of commonalities between these two populations that you've served, but also some differences. So people that are currently and actively involved in this work of serving the community versus veterans that have stepped away from that kind of work now. Do you notice a difference as far as kind of needs or how you might frame self-care and stress? What are is stress the same now for veterans like it might be with those firefighters?
I think there's a lot of overlap.
Yeah.
There's a lot of overlap, and even if you look at our first responders, police and fire particularly, a lot of them are veterans. right? So I still,
Absolutely.
sometimes see some of my firefighters, to this day, just in different settings. So there is a lot of overlap. And so I think it's just, again, realizing that everybody identifies, the need for self-care differently and what it looks like. And so I haven't seen too many contrasting, well, I need to do this or I need to do this. It's everybody is in their own individual way trying to figure out, how can I keep going? How can I keep my head above water? And that's usually, those common practices, those common things, meeting with friends or taking a walk or even a hot shower just to relax, your tight muscles. Those are the common things I find people gravitate to.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. That's good. The concept of self-care, regardless of population, again, it's out there. It's out there. We're talking about it all the time. And sometimes I get the sense that like, I'm not doing it right. I'm not doing it right because I've seen this even like in my social feeds, like self-care is not about getting manicures. Okay. It's got to go deeper than that. And it's like, oh, okay. I guess I'm doing self-care wrong. And maybe it has to be this very deep spiritual, psychological experience. Do you ever find that people find they're not doing or I don't know, like I'm leaning on you as like a self-care expert because you kind of declared it, but first of all, is there a, in air quotes, wrong way to do self-care? Do you find that some people just will say something like, well, I guess I could take a hot bath, and they're just naming something that sounds pleasant, which may or may not be the right thing for them? And like, do you ever pick up on that?
I usually try to ask people, when do you feel, the most content? Right. So that's going to look different for different people. Some people like the hot bath, that's their thing. Like I think about that hot bath all day from the time I get up. I know I've got to go to work. I know I've got to get kids to school, and I'm just waiting for that bath. Like that's their thing. Wow. And you can kind of pick up on that. That really means something to them. I recently had lunch with a friend who I hadn't seen for forever, since the pandemic. She had a baby through the pandemic and was just really keeping distance, obviously. And after we had lunch, she got back home and I got a text message and she said, I didn't realize how bad I needed my friend. Oh, yeah. So just that meeting, just that lunch, like she didn't realize like that's what she needed all this time when she was stressed and her son had COVID. Like she just needed her friend, like a meal face to face.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Because this question, when do you feel most content? There's a lot of people who haven't connected to feeling content for a long time, and they forget what makes them feel content.
Yeah, that's
right.
true.
So then that's when they're saying things like, I don't know, I guess baths, I guess a bath, that might not be it. So I feel like there's probably a lot of discovery around, maybe there's a lot of trial and error involved.
I think there is, and recognizing, like you said, there's no wrong way. No one gets to tell you that you're taking care of yourself wrong, right? Because you're walking in your own shoes. And, that brings to mind a person that I was working with who was sent to me by their primary care provider for diabetes, weight loss, a host of other things. And when they got in the chair, I was like, what matters most to you? What makes you feel alive? And the answer was bowling. I just want to bowl. I don't care about, I don't care about the diabetes. Like, I want to be able to bowl. And so the whole thing was, okay, that's how you take care of yourself. That's what makes you come alive. What do you need to do in order to get you back to the bowling alley? And so we just started working on that. And you know what? He made it to the national championship that year. Like he hadn't bowled in months because of the chronic pain and was so depressed because he couldn't bowl. And so just figuring out what we could do to get him back in that bowling alley. And that's what we focused on. And his wife even said, he's a different person now. He was so depressed before. He is a different person now.
That's cool.
Yeah. So tell me, so self-care, stress, sleep, how much of you, or what percentage of your conversation, or how often is actual nutrition and actual exercise entering your conversations?
I think it's pretty high, especially when you're talking about stress, because people typically, and even if we think about the populations we've been talking about, maybe some unhealthy habits have been ways that they've coped with stress, active duty environment, there's high tobacco use, even in, there's other things that people do to cope that aren't always getting them closer to where they want to be in their health. And so introducing new ways to deal with stress, understanding, deep breathing or a walk can lower my blood pressure or can, help me get rid of that headache because I've been holding so much tension. So those are the things that I found have really led to change. It's just one person in particular, they were wanting to lose weight. They were finding also, though, that they had a short fuse. Their exact words was, "I have such a short fuse." And they were snapping at people at home. And that was concerning to them. And so we said, okay, well, what if every day, what would it look like to take a walk around the block just once a day, not for exercise? We're not thinking about the weight loss right now, just so that you don't blow up at your wife. What would that look like? And so that's what we worked on from session A to session B. And when that person came back, they had lost 17 pounds just by walking when they were stressed. That's how stressed they were. They had lost 17 pounds in that amount of time. So it's just reframing it, right? Maybe it's not exercise. You're just taking a walk to clear your head. That's why you're walking. It's not, to fit into your pants. Or just reframing it. Sometimes that works.
Did that exercise?
Sorry, Erin, go ahead.
Yeah. I'm just curious, did that exercise help the client connect to their stress triggers and maybe quieten that snapping tendency a little bit in any way?
Yeah, so they were able to recognize, when they felt they were going to explode, right? Things were a conversation was getting heated, or, maybe one of the kids said something that pushed a button. So they were able to recognize those triggers. And that's something that we kind of talked about in coaching. When do you feel triggered? Or when do you know that you need a walk? How will you know you need to go outside? And so using those and actually doing it when that time came, kind of was helpful for that person. And also knowing that you have a team of support, like we talked about before. This individual was also connected with mental health. So maybe there were tools that they were working on with that. And so we're trying to pull from all the tools in their toolbox to have success.
I'm going to ask one more follow-up logistical question on this, because I love this. It's a great example. And I'm just trying to think about how that would execute in a coaching relationship. Because there's times when with my clients, we've co-created a plan like this, where every time I feel X, I'm going to do Y. And then they report back a week later and say, well, I didn't do it, but I'll try again. So my logistical question is, had you created some kind of accountability plan with this client so that in real time they could connect with you as to whether this was happening or not happening, or did you kind of let them go off on their own and report back? And I'm just curious.
So how it works, our coaching there, that specific employment, it's just session to session. So there's no, text messages, there's no, check-in phone calls, unless of course that individual feels like it's needed. But the way that our schedules are built, that's not really kind of how it goes. So it's just, I know that I'm going to see you 2 weeks from now or a month from now, and these are the things you're working on. And then I find that individual in particular was happy, so excited to come back and share that was an outcome, that was a byproduct of him walking, was that he had lost weight. So I think it just depends on the person.
It does. That's the reason I asked, is because I think I've had goals like this with clients who week after week after week after week haven't successfully implemented it. So it just sounds like this particular person was like, I'm doing this. But I'd be curious, what would happen if he came back at your next session and said, oh yeah, I forgot, I never did that. What would you have done?
Yeah, well, so usually what happens, someone will say, not that I didn't do it at all. I feel like 8 times out of 10, they'll say that they did a little bit, or they did it halfway, right? It wasn't all or nothing. It was, I did it in the beginning, or I did it a couple days. And so we really just highlight there. So what had to happen for you to do it those days? Something went right, a series of events or a mindset. How did you get those days? And then let's just really focus on that. Not because nobody wants to go and feel like I'm going to get in trouble because I didn't do what I said I was going to do. So it's really highlighting those 2 days, even if it was only 2 days out of 2 weeks,
Right.
What did you do to make those 2 days go really well?
Yes, I love that. I just want, like, just to wrap up my sort of line of interrogation here is like, that's great coaching, because we can always say when it was working, what was working. And then when it stopped working, what happened that made it stop working, with zero judgment, purely just, and sort of, let's analyze this and collect the data on it and just, proceed from there. I think it's a really, I love getting into into the granular details of this stuff with clients, because they're going to come to the session saying, I don't know, I said I was going to walk 7 days. I'll only walk 2. It's like, great. Okay, let's dig into this. All right, let's figure it
Yes.
out. Right? It's fun. It's fun to be really curious about that stuff with your clients.
Yes, I enjoy that part of it.
And so for coaches listening here who may not be board certified or are curious about becoming board certified, what you just described is textbook coaching, the conversation of focusing on the positive rather than getting the client focused on all the things that went wrong and perpetuating the emotion and the stress that comes with that.
Yes.
It's emphasizing and having a conversation about what went right and how can we replicate that. What we know about coaching is the more we can get our clients focused on what they can do and the benefits and that positive psychology, that motivational interviewing techniques is what drives positive change. So for coaches listening, this is textbook coaching behavior. And I absolutely love that. And the other thing I took away from that story that I often hear from coaches is, first of all, totally within scope for any coach, even if you're not an exercise science expert, right? Having a conversation about just getting out for a walk and all the benefits that do. You don't have to be a certified personal trainer or have a master's degree in exercise science to have that conversation. And this is also an illustration of why exercise alone, like getting out there and lifting weights and going to the gym, is not the reason why you can't lose weight. Right. And having a conversation about all the benefits of, so that taking that walk, there's activity involved. But it helps reduce stress. You have a better relationship with your spouse that now also reduces stress and creates a better environment for you to make better choices.
Yes.
So I absolutely love that. And so from a coaching perspective, here's another question I have for you is when I talk to people, it's, hey, where I live and in my state, I'm not allowed to give nutrition advice. How do I work around that? Okay. So this is where I'm having a conversation about, okay, so we need to lean into what coaching really is. And talking about nutrition is just a piece, but that doesn't mean you have to put someone on a diet. That's not your role. So would you speak to that about how nutrition plays in what you do with veterans and in your practice?
Yeah. So it's recognizing, like you said, nutrition's a piece of the puzzle, right? We're going to lean on the strength of a registered dietitian or someone else that needs specific guidance. We are helping that person we're working with discover, what does nutrition in your life look like? What are some maybe habits or patterns? We're not giving them a meal plan or anything like that. So again, it's about the discovery and meeting people where they are. For a lot of people, it's coming to the realization that, what I'm doing is not fueling my body. The way that I'm eating is not giving me the energy I want. So that big mission, that purpose that we talked about, what matters most, I can't do that because I don't have the energy to do that because of what I'm putting in my body. Like those are the things we're coaching around. And we also offer like classes. So that helps just, how can I recognize the relationship between food and my mood? Or how can I, work on just some of the chronic pain that I've been feeling? Is it something that I'm eating perhaps? Or, when do I gravitate towards that bag of chips when I'm stressed? Like looking at all of those things and how they're impacting our overall health.
So thank you for illustrating that, because we get this in our own community, right, Erin? About, hey, I just realized the law in my state doesn't allow me to do this. How can I go to business? And we keep trying to drive home that coaching is about behaviors. It's about habits. It's about change. It's not about putting somebody on a diet or even encouraging them to go on a diet.
Exactly.
Right. And so what I hope people listening take away from this is you can have a conversation about food without quote unquote giving nutrition advice or putting people on a diet or having people weigh and measure macros. Look, if they want to do that, fine, support them. Great. If that excites you and you feel like that's going to keep you accountable, great. We can have a conversation about why that's the case, and it maybe work towards actually weaning people off having to micromanage their own eating behaviors. But sometimes maybe that's where people are right now. So whatever the case may be, I guess I love your explanation about how this kind of fits in here. And you didn't say one word about telling people they need to eat anything in particular or about diet specifically. And it's all around, if you were to think about this, like nutrition really is kind of part of self-care. Really?
Huge.
Right? Huge.
Feeding yourself. Yeah.
It is.
Awesome. I love it. So, so where do you see this going for you? Like, what do you anticipate? Not that, staying here, like, hey, I'm super fulfilled where I'm at, or you know what, I'm learning and I'm digesting all of this, but because I don't know how this works, because you had said the contract had kind of been up with what you were doing before, and hey, what's next? So that's the other thing I guess I want to encourage health coaches to take away from this is be present in the moment in what you're doing now, but also be on the lookout for the next sort of fulfilling opportunity. So anyway, I don't want to put words in your mouth. I asked you a question.
Yes, I've always been of the mindset that I want to grow, right? I want to be challenged, and I want to lead the most people that I can towards wellness and health. Like, where can I have the biggest impact? And so, one thing that I've been doing, actually, I'm in the process of transitioning, is to be able to reach more people, especially with the pandemic. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of people that are struggling that I can't help because they're not a veteran, right? Yeah. So I feel like this is a good time to kind of just open up for the opportunity for, single moms or parents who have been virtual learning while still trying to do their own job, as I was, or anybody really just suffered loss or grief, or maybe they've gained weight because of the pandemic, or maybe they're trying to, figure out what this next phase looks like. So there's a big need right there. And I've seen it in my city a lot. So I feel like I'm preparing myself to answer the call in that sense.
So what's that going to look like? Is it going to be looking for another organization to work with, or starting your own private practice? What do you...
My own practice.
That's really cool. We were last week we spoke to Dr. John Berardi, who's the of precision nutrition, and he was sharing that he heard of a coach that is shifting their focus of their niche to helping people manage long COVID. And so what's interesting is like these COVID related, I don't want to sound like we're taking advantage of this, but like these niches or these populations that are showing up. I think you just, like when you think about your background in the military and then working with people in highly stressful environments, well, the world was a highly stressful environment for the last 2 years. So you do have like, there's an expertise there, like I think you have like, or there's an affect or something that you can bring to the table to help people like manage through the experience of trauma. They just,
that is it. Trauma.
Yeah. I mean, if you really think about it, I mean, with the veterans that you work with, and I would even say the first responders that you work with, it's like some form of PTSD has got to be part of the equation. And I personally know people that are not part of the military at all, but this entire response to COVID and their relationship with it and the fear has truly caused like the fear is still at a fever pitch in a lot of ways. And they definitely feel their entire family traumatized over the impact that this has had. So I can totally see how your experience working with these populations can now prepare you for helping the general population that really in the past, they may have never really experienced before now.
Yeah.
So I love that. So, look, I guess I would love to hear how you plan to do that. Do you plan to be mostly online here and kind of get out there and market yourself? What does that potentially look like for you?
So kind of a hybrid, mostly virtual. And some clients that I've already taken have been, really, again, like I said, I've seen the need. I've seen like, it's like little breadcrumbs, like whether it's social media or somebody will say something. And so it's kind of been a whirlwind, right? And right now I'm like waiting for my website to be finished and I'm like ready to go. So I just feel like this is the time. And everything that you just said, right? People are looking for something, and not to say, again, like they're looking for somebody to fix them, but really just to be a guide and help them navigate what this next phase looks like, because there's been so much uncertainty. So if I can put a handle on, okay, this is what I can do in the moment for myself, for my family, then that's what people are willing, to pay for.
Yeah.
I love it. That's going to be a big transition to go from clients who haven't had to pay you out of pocket to clients that are paying out of pocket. And I think you're right. I mean, we've talked to a lot of people that have said the pandemic has actually increased their business. To your exact point, people trying to figure out just how to be healthier, or have recognized, hey, obesity is clearly a large risk factor, or these other I guess, pre-existing conditions, and they're, so, hey, I mean, fantastic. How exciting for you.
I'm excited.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, so your website's not ready yet, but are you on social media? So like people just sort of listening about this story and wanting to follow your journey and what you're up to, where can people connect with you?
Yeah, so all of that's coming like as of this week. So,
so by the time this goes live, it'll be live. So go ahead and share it.
So the name is Hale Legacy, if I can share that. It's Hale Legacy Health Coaching and Fitness. And I chose Hale. Not too many people are familiar with that word, especially in this context. So it means like with health, strength, and vigor. So when we think about our legacy, that's what you want to live, a legacy of health and strength. So I want to help people shift the focus from how they want to be remembered to how they want to be known. So you are strong now, you can be whole now. So really helping people navigate that space.
Cool. That's amazing. Yeah, it's always such a joy to listen to the trajectory of a practicing health coach. And I really want to thank you for sharing all that you've shared with us today. It was really great to learn from you.
Thank you for the opportunity. I've enjoyed getting to talk with both of you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Maiya.
This podcast was brought to you by Primal Health Coach Institute. To learn more about how to become a successful health coach, get in touch with us by visiting primalhealthcoach.com/call. Or if you're already a successful health coach, practitioner, influencer, or thought leader with a thriving business and an interesting story, we'd love to hear from you. Connect with us at hello@primalhealthcoach.com and let us know why we need to interview you for Health Coach Radio. Thanks for listening.